Hi everyone, welcome to Tech Math. This is our first lesson and it's called Arithmetic of Whole Numbers. This is a little bit of a description for whole numbers. There's simply the numbers starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And then when we talk about place value, this is important when we're rounding. Now honestly in this class, most of our rounding is going to be to the tens, the hundreds, the tenths, the hundredths, and those kind of things once we get into decimal numbers, which is fairly soon. So you just need to know your place values so that you're able to round appropriately. So notice that the 2 in 762 means something different from the 2 in 425 or 208. Notice down here I have a little place value chart so that you can check out the place values, right? We have the ones, the tens, the hundreds, the thousands place. And so when you take a look at this, in 762, the 2 is in the ones place, so that means 2 ones. In the 425, the 2 is in the tens place, so that means we have 2 tens. And then in 208, it is in the hundreds place, so we have 2 hundreds. We've got the ones, the tens, the hundreds, the thousands, and I am going to have you round on some of those right now. Also, the 10,000s place would be the next one, 100,000s, and so on. At this point, since it's whole numbers, we don't have any decimals. Now, let's talk about rounding. A lot of students kind of take rounding for granted, I think. They're like, oh, this is easy. I'm fine with this. I can do this okay. But what I found is whether it's because of not paying attention to directions or I'm not sure what happens. There's a lot of rounding errors in this class. And because of this, you could end up potentially losing out on quite a few points just due to rounding. So make this a serious thing. I've got to know my place values. I want to pay attention to directions and get the rounding right. Okay, so here's a little method for rounding. And I know a lot of times students won't take the time to do this method, and I understand that, but on the other hand, making mistakes is not the greatest way to go either. So does it take very long? I don't think so. What I like to do is underline, like on this number here, 378,457. We're going to round it to the nearest thousands place. So as you can see, I've underlined the 8, right? Here's my 8. And then I'm going to look at the number to the right of that because that's the number that tells me what to do with the 8. Okay, so if that number is below 5, that means I leave the 8 as it is, but all the other numbers change to zeros. So this is going to be 378,000. And by the way, anytime on the videos I'm talking about something, you're like, wait a minute, I need to read this a little closer, just pause it and read through everything. I'm going to be explaining it. I don't always read every single thing on the slide. So that one's rounded. Now let's look at the next one. We're rounding this one to the 10,000s place. So I've underlined the 7. And the 8 tells us what to do with the 7. Well, in this case, if it's 5 or more, then I'm going to add 1 to the 7. And sometimes people get confused on this because it seems like, isn't that more numbers? But if you think about that, that's 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. And below 5 is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, right, we've got 5 numbers either way. The 8 tells us we have to add 1 to the 7. So we're going to make it an 8. And then everything else becomes a 0. Everything to the right of the number I underlined. That's why I feel like that is helpful to underline the number so that you know how many zeros, especially on these whole numbers. Now when we get to decimal numbers, it's a little bit different on the zeros. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros we have to put on there to get that number rounded correctly. All right, so now we're just going to do a little bit of practice. So you might have noticed that page was blurry. That happens sometimes with the app that I use, so then I just have to get out of it and come back in. So I pause my recording and do that. All right, so we're going to take the 793 and round it to the nearest 10. And the tens place is where the 9 is located. So I underline the 9, I point at the 3 just to remind myself, oh, that's the number I need to look at to see what to do with this 9. So in this case, I'm simply going to leave the 9 as it is, and this will round to 790. So I replace that 3 with a 0, and then I've got it rounded correctly. On the next one, I'm going to round to the thousands place, so 5,362 to the nearest 1,000, and that would be the 5 is in the thousands place. The 3 tells me, do I add 1 to the 5? Do I leave the 5 alone? And I don't do anything to the 5. I leave it as it is. So we're rounding to 5,000. Now, logically, this number is closer to 5,000 than it is to 6,000. It can be that easy when you're looking at a number, especially when we're rounding, the number furthest to the left. So it's closer to 5,000 than 6,000, so it rounds to 5,000. Now, you can put the comma when it's just 4 digits. I don't always put the comma in there, so that's up to you. 5,362 to the nearest 100. The 3 is in the hundreds place, and the 6 is going to tell me what I do with that 3, and in this case I need to add 1 to the 3, so that's going to be 5,400. All right, and we've got it rounded to the hundreds place. On the last one, we're going to round to the nearest 10,000. Don't forget to pause as we go. You can pause and go ahead and work these out and check yourself with me. I just keep going so I can try to get the videos done in a decent length of time, but you can always pause and work those out and then come back to the recording to see how you did. Okay, so to the nearest 10,000, that means that I'm going to round to this one furthest to the left, the 6. The 3 tells me don't add anything to that 6, so that means it's going to be 60,000. And once again, you can see to the nearest 10,000, right? This is going to be closer to 60,000 than it is to 70,000. Another way to look at it. All right, so that's your rounding for this lesson. As you go, sometimes there are times when you're going to need to round within one of the application problems. And so this is an application problem. This class is really built on application of all these different things you're going to be learning. So you definitely want to practice all the word problems, the application problems, because that's where the emphasis is going to be. I'm going to teach you these little things leading up to that, and then we're going to apply it to these application problems. Now, some of them at the beginning are pretty straightforward, but once again, they can be a little confusing also because you've got to get the operation correct. Right now we're adding, so you can tell, oh, we're going to add on this one most likely. On this one it says the answer to an addition problem is called the sum. And so if I'm finding the sum, I'm adding. In this case, we're on electrical trades. Your book is listed out this way. So when you're looking at application problems, it will say electrical trades or welding or automotive, all kinds of different things on these word problems. Okay. The Radius Electronics Company orders 325 resistors, 162 capacitors, 25 integrated circuit boards, and 68 transistors. Calculate the total number of parts ordered. Total, that's another word that tells me, oh, I am going to add in this case. So this time we're going to find a total. We just add them up. Now, when I have you doing written homework, this is the kind of thing that I want you to show me. I don't want just an answer. I know we use calculators all the time, and you will get to use your calculator on everything, but you must show your work. You're proving to me you know what you're doing. I don't want just an answer, because what if you key in one number wrong, all you give me is an answer, then it's either right or it's wrong. But if I can see, oh, you were adding up the numbers, but you must have made a mistake on your calculations when you were entering the number on your calculator, and trust me, that happens to all of us, including myself. And so if we add those all up, and of course you just use your calculator, don't try to do everything by hand. It will take way too much time. And I want you to learn the process. I want you to learn how to interpret these word problems, not that you can show me you can do addition the long way. And so showing work is going to be important. I hope that as you work through my lab, you're also writing out the problems and showing some work to go with it, because it just helps you learn, not trying to just look at the screen and calculate with your calculator, because you're going to be faced with so many different application problems. You want to be on the ball with that. Okay. Subtraction of whole numbers. The difference is the name given to the answer in a subtraction problem. And you're not going to have the word difference sometimes. You just have to interpret the problem. Okay, so in this one, it's a welding problem. 5 pieces measuring 26, 47, 38, 27, and 32 centimeters are cut from a steel bar that was 200 centimeters long. Allowing for a total of 1 centimeter for waste and cutting, what is the length of the piece remaining? So the length of the piece remaining is the part that tells you to subtract. If that didn't sound like subtraction to you, that just means you just have to do some practice with this. Okay, so we are going to subtract from 200, and we're going to subtract a total. So I'm going to put this in parentheses. We're going to add up, and you don't have to do it this way. You could add it up first and show, hey, I added these up, and now I'm going to subtract that number from the 200. Don't forget the 1 centimeter of waste, because then you would be off by 1. So that gives me 200 minus, you're going to add up everything in the parentheses. I always double check myself. Did I write out the numbers correctly? And even on the calculation, you might want to add it more than once, especially if it's something that you're doing for points, right? If you're doing something for points, then you may want to make sure that you've got the numbers added up right. That would be good, yes. And then we end up with 29 centimeters. Okay. So let me see the next problem. Yeah, I think we can do this. So I try to keep my videos to less than 15 minutes, and then I just make as many videos as it takes to teach the lesson. These are the same lessons I use in my seated classes, and I used them last semester, so I've already gone through all of them and gone back and made any corrections on, oh, I think we need more of this or less of that. Okay. So this one is about automotive trades. A set of tires was rated at 40,000 miles. A car's odometer read 53,216 when the tires were installed and 91,625 when they needed replacing. Now we know that those readings mean miles. How long did they actually last? Well, they lasted the difference between these two numbers, right? So we're going to take the 91,625 and subtract 53,216. And so they lasted for 38,409 miles. Once again, this is a place where you could pause and work this out yourself and make sure that you're like, oh, I got that interpretation right. Part B says, by how many miles did they miss the advertised rating? Well, the rating was for 40,000 miles, and they didn't get 40,000 miles, did they? So they got less than the expected. But this can happen for a lot of different reasons. How you drive your car is one of those. The terrain you drive your car on is another. Why, you can contribute to the life of the tires in a negative or positive way. And so we subtract to see how much we were off, and it was 1,591 miles. Oh, and I didn't mention about labeling. Labeling is super important in this class. Anytime there's something that you are working with that has a label, you must label answers. So don't forget that part. All right, so I'm going to stop this video, and then I will start up another video to teach the rest of the lesson. Maybe I need 2 more, I don't know. All right, I will talk to you on the next video.